You know, family, I think we need to talk about W. Kamau Bell, and I'm convinced the W stands for worthless. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. A pathetic, going nowhere hack who is trying and failing to make it in comedy, desperately toils for years in hole-in-the-wall comedy clubs, languishing in obscurity, desperately trying to get out. And then one day, almost out of the blue, this unfunny wannabe never gonna be decides to attack Bill Cosby, and the white media coincidentally starts fawning over this person, reporting on them breathlessly as if they were something good to eat. Neither the white media nor anyone else cared about this person before, not even enough to ridicule him. But when he decides to take shots at Cosby, the white media gives him headlines and interviews. Nobody's asking how it is that a struggling, failing comedian is suddenly being taken seriously. No, I'm not talking about worthless Kamau Bell. I'm talking about Hannibal Buress. I hadn't even heard of that clown before he started making lies about Cosby a part of his regular sit-down routine. There's long been talk that Judd Apatow was the one who wrote or otherwise gave Hannibal Buress the talking points to attack Cosby with, and the two of them have worked together since Buress acted as the point man for that media judicial lynching of Cosby, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Now, about the same time that Hannibal Buress and Judd Apatow were beginning their bromance together, Kamau Bell gave up on comedy, or rather the poor comedy club owners finally got tired of him stinking up the joint, and he decided that he would try to reinvent himself as a political observer. This clown has no background in politics. He's never shown the slightest aptitude for anything serious. He's not witty, and as we already know, he's not funny. So what in God's name qualifies him in any way to speak on American politics or society? He's an empty vessel, just like Hannibal Buress. He has no following to speak of. He doesn't know anything, and nobody cares what he has to say. But that didn't stop CNN from giving him a show that nobody watches. What a surprise. By the way, this is the same CNN who did their own phony hit piece special, The Case Against Cosby, but I'm sure that's just another coincidence, right? Gee, isn't it amazing how closely connected all these people are who do these smear campaigns against black men, almost as if they're all organized and they're working in cahoots with one another? We have to wonder, just whom among the white media put Kamau Bell up to this latest stunt? Because we know this clown didn't just get up this week and decide to do this any more than Hannibal Buress did. These morons do what their white paymasters tell them to do. They pride themselves on how slavishly they can obey massa, because that's the only means these scumbags have to eat. Now, Kamau Bell is being given a platform currently at the Sundance Film Festival to push yet another so-called documentary about Bill Cosby called We Need to Talk About Cosby.
What?
And this isn't some digicam affair that he made in his spare time. This is going to be a 4-hour docuseries. You heard me right. 4 hours. And it's being produced by Showtime, or should I say the CBS Corporation. Need I remind you that this is the same CBS which until a few years ago was being run by the infamous sexual predator Les Moonves, who violated and attacked numerous women before being tossed out. And it's also the same CBS which employed the geriatric sexual predator Charlie Rose, who also got called out for sexual misconduct. And lest I forget, Don Hewitt, the so-called Dean of American Journalism over at CBS News 60 Minutes. These are the guys who are calling themselves making attack pieces about Bill Cosby. Now, common sense would dictate that it would make a lot more sense for CBS to use their resources to fund a documentary about Moonves, Charlie Rose, and Don Hewitt, since all of those predators were under CBS's roof. But of course, it's because they were under CBS's roof that CBS isn't talking about it. But more than that, it's because the men who run the white media, they want to focus on black men instead to get the attention off themselves. And these bootlicks know that their ticket to ride is attacking some black person. The white media will immediately show up and shower them with attention and phony praise. Kamau Bell's carrying out the dirty work of the white media and acting as their crash dummy. That way they can point to their black tool, and say, this was all his idea. You see, he's the man out front. Why, you should blame him. Don't blame us. Keep in mind, Sundance is also where HBO's defamation piece Leaving Neverland debuted. So the Sundance Film Festival has long been the go-to place for the white media to air these racist attack pieces, and then the white media will try to whitewash it with the narrative that these are just tiny little low-budget pieces being made for the indie film circuit by small-timers who are merely asking innocent questions, when in fact these are actually big-budget, carefully crafted propaganda pieces being made by some of the biggest corporations on the planet, and the men who run and operate these white media outlets and who commission these hit pieces are the real sexual predators. They fund and distribute these slander attacks as a way to get attention off of themselves. Now, this documentary is meant to be aimed at the black community. Even the title makes that clear. Bill attempts to co-opt the kind of urban patois that normally is found in black conscious circles. We need to talk about Cosby. No, we need to talk about Kamau Bill and the white men back of him. Even if you are simple-minded enough to say, yeah, Cosby did it, that many women can't be wrong. Even if you are one of these hood rat dusty dudes, simple Simons, even you with your low IQ would have to admit, do we really need another Cosby documentary? We really need another piece about Bill Cosby? For what? What's going to be unearthed? What are we going to find out that we didn't know before? What's going to be said that we haven't heard 1,000 times already? It's going to be just the same old rise and fall of Bill Cosby narrative that we've been subjected to for years now. The white media failed to keep Bill Cosby in prison. The illegal conviction got overturned, so they're doing what they did with O.J., repeating the false accusations nonstop in the hope that if people hear it enough times, they'll start to believe it. Kamau Bill tries to whitewash his bootlicking with the same old splaining, but even he knows nobody's buying it. All you have to do is go to Sundance's own YouTube channel and see one of the promotional pieces for this dreck. And out of the 1,124 unfortunate people who accidentally watched this video, only 22 of them bothered to give it thumbs up. And when you look at the comments, you only see about 21 of those. And most of them are calling Bill out for this crap. Quote, if we're going this route, let's make sure we talk about why he was released. Another one says, great, hope your next 8-part series will be titled, We Need to Talk About Harvey Weinstein. Later on this year, perhaps. Horse S docuseries, and he's not an artist. F out of here. Why can't you make your money elsewhere? This documentary is slanderous. I hope Bill Cosby sues you. Other commenters said, hey, after this masterpiece, how about some more on people like Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, Robert Wagner, Robert Blake, Kevin Spacey, and the other 1,000 white men in Hollywood? None of the accusers really have no evidence, just a witch hunt on this black man, and for him to cover this seems more like a Hannibal Buress move. Kamal, be careful what you ask for, because it might happen. Cosby is innocent. He should sue your. About the most equivocating comment you find is the one that says it would be sad if he, talking about Kamau Bill, just parades women and repeats the same old tired narrative of rape. It would be disappointing if it's another piece that ignores some of the issues around lack of evidence, false memory, borderline women relationships, hedonistic party culture, ambulance chasing, entrapment, deposition, or even by constant abuse of power. Now on my Twitter feed, I linked to the interview that Deadline Hollywood, one of those white supremacist suspected media sites, did with Bell. And it was basically a complete and thorough sloppy kiss, congratulating him for having the guts to go after Cosby. Because, I mean, nobody's been speaking against Cosby before now, right? But it's during the interview where Kamau Bill makes it very clear this is the most self-hating Negro that you've heard in a long freaking time. This guy absolutely hates black people. He despises and hates black men in particular. I'm surprised he doesn't get up every morning and try to hang himself. But this Bill character, he goes out of his way during this interview to spell out explicitly that this is about destroying everything that Cosby's done his entire life. This is about casting all kinds of slander and all kinds of defamatory muck on the man for his entire life. That this guy has been a criminal. He's been a bad person all of his days. He was never a good person. Now, as Kamau Bill puts it, I understand people who maybe don't want to believe these women. I think they may have some idea that this all happened during the Cosby Show, or it all happened later in his life. No, so once you realize that these accusations go all the way back to the early days of his career, I think it will change a lot of people's perspective on what they believe or don't believe. First of all, accusations from some model actress wannabe, whatever, some heifer from way back in the 70s, that means nothing. This guy is not going to bring up any accusations that haven't been heard 1,000 times before. Some geriatric, wrinkled up nobody who was desperately trying to figure out how to hustle or finesse herself some quickie cash in her declining years. This Bell guy, he's not going to bring anything that we haven't heard and seen and hasn't already been disproven 1,000 times before. But he's pretending as if, oh no, we're going to change minds. Yeah, presenting the same old lying talking points that we've already seen, already heard, and already dismissed. Bill's already faced rightful criticism for the lies and slander that he's selling, so he thinks to himself that he's brilliantly heading it off at the pass, that he's getting out in front of it when all he's doing is drawing attention to it. He says, and I quote, I've already been accused of a little bit, and I'm sure it'll come out more, is this idea that I've been chosen by the white man to take a black man down. Like the white man has anointed me, the black guy with a white wife, because, of course, to take the black man down. Yeah, because that's exactly what it is. Is that perhaps Kamau Bell who's making an unintentional confession? I think so. Next, Bill then offers the typical go-to excuse that every bootlick in the white media tries to offer whenever they get called out for some blatantly anti-black hit piece. He says, well, we're trying to start a conversation. You know, that line needs to be retired. People need to stop saying that. This isn't about starting a conversation. It's about preventing a conversation regarding the white media moguls and executives and on-air talent like Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes and Matt Lauer and a ton of others who are actually committing the kinds of crimes that Cosby was falsely accused of. But Bill claims, if you watch the film, it is clear we're talking about not just Cosby. Bill Cosby is the way into the conversation, but we're not just talking about Bill Cosby behavior. We're not just talking about black men behavior. We're talking about the behavior of powerful men of all races, and that's important. Now, look at what he says. We're not just talking about black men behavior. We're not just talking about Bill Cosby behavior. That's your clue that, yeah, this is going to be all about Cosby, and we're going to be talking about the rape culture in the black community and all of these rape-happy black men who can't restrain themselves. Why, if only someone would do something. And you better believe a large part of this documentary is going to be devoted to advocating for more laws and more prisons, and we need to make sure that the laws are harsher so that they do something about all these rape-happy black men out here. Oh, it's not about Bill Cosby. We're focusing on powerful men of all races. Well, if this is about powerful men of all races, then when in the series does Bill get around to talking about Les Moonves, or Woody Allen, or Bill O'Reilly, or Matt Lauer, you know, the white men who not only didn't go to prison for their crimes, but they're not being dogged by a raft of civil suits either. No prosecutors who are running on a campaign platform of, I'm going to put Bill O'Reilly behind bars. Now, Showtime has paid Kamau Bell to be the front man for what's supposed to be a 4-hour series. So he's got plenty of time to talk about at least one or two of those bad white media executives, right? Because this is about powerful men of all races, right? And in 4 hours, I mean, you can't just spend 4 hours rehashing and bringing up and dredging up the exact same stuff we've heard for years about Cosby. I mean, you can't spend 4 hours doing that, right? So if Kamau Bell is so hot and bothered about starting a conversation, then let's find out when he wants to start a conversation about Brock Turner or Drew Clinton. Both of them were convicted of rape, actual rape, not he touched me inappropriately, allegedly, or I felt uncomfortable. They actually got caught in the act of rape. And then they were immediately let go by judges who said, we don't want to ruin these rapists' lives. And unlike Cosby, they didn't have to make up the accusations against Brock Turner and Drew Clinton. They actually did it. Nobody had to make something up. Will Kamau Bell decide that we need to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse and how the police and judiciary in Kenosha worked hand in hand with him to commit a mass shooting, kill 2 people, and protect Rittenhouse from punishment, and now celebrate him, at least in the right-wing hate media, as some sort of folk hero? Because that's the kind of power that Bill Cosby couldn't pay for, and you had some podunk punk from Lord knows what part of the sticks, this clown who nobody ever heard of, yet he was being protected as if he was the president of these United States. Complete and thorough immunity from law. So when are we going to have a conversation about that, Kamau Bell? You want to talk about powerful men of all races? Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about people who actually have power, because Bill Cosby didn't. But of course, that's not going to happen because Kamau Bell made it clear he's going to spend 4 hours only focusing on Cosby, but that's because he's trying to start a conversation. So he's going to rehash old lies and debunked gossip about an 80-something-year-old man, and they're taking these pathetic lies and slander and using 4 hours to do it. This is basically Showtime doing their own version of Surviving R. Kelly, just cutting and pasting the same old playbook. Now, Bill was asked a one-and-done question about what clearly is going to be the biggest elephant in the room, which is out of a 4-hour series, they don't spend much time at all on Cosby's first trial. They just skip right over the first trial. You know, the one that ended in a mistrial. They don't even ask why that was. Kamau Bell sidestepped that one, and he was allowed to sidestep it with a lame response about we need 5 hours or more. But then, just a couple of sentences later, he contradicts that by saying, to me, the trials were important when it was about the way in which this guy was put away. But once he got out, the story shifted significantly. Now, there you have it. He admits it. Why is it you don't say anything about the first trial? Well, the only thing that was really important was how this guy got convicted. Putting him away was the big thing. We're trying to validate that. We don't want to say anything about the fact that all of the illegal maneuvering necessary to railroad him. Well, we certainly don't want to talk about the fact that the appellate courts looked and said this guy was railroaded or throwing the conviction out. We don't want to focus on that. Bell says, Cosby getting out of prison threw this film for a loop in a lot of ways. It shouldn't have. So what does that tell you? Two things. First, this propaganda piece he's making was never about power structures. It would have been focused on how it was illegal to prosecute Cosby in the first place when the DA's office agreed that they wouldn't. The entire reason Cosby was freed was because they prosecuted him. They broke their word. The appellate courts agreed, yeah, once you make that agreement you won't prosecute, you can't go back on it. The entire reason that Cosby wasn't in prison and Kamau Bell just completely ignores this colossal fact, why? For the same reason that the rest of the white media refuses to talk about it. Because if you discuss the DA's agreement with Cosby that they would not prosecute him, then what people have to admit is the DA's office said they didn't think that any jury would find Andrea Constand to be credible. And they don't want people saying that. They want to say instead is, well, there was some stuff going on behind the scenes, but it wasn't important. Oh, the DAs, they knew that there was a case here. They absolutely knew it. No, the entire reason that Cosby's out of prison right now is because the DA's office looked at Andrea Constand's case and said, ain't no jury going to buy this crap. But what Kamau Bell also has done is he's confirmed that this smear piece has been in the works for a long while now. Cosby was only released 7 months ago, so for that predictable event to throw Kamau Bell's propaganda piece for a loop, what that means is they were deep into making this smear piece long before summer of last year. And Kamau Bell does confess to that. When talking about how the production got delayed due to COVID, Kamau Bell finally admits, when we finally started it up again and then filmed, and then literally in Philly, the last day we filmed, or what we thought was going to be the last day, is when he got out of prison. Now, anyone who makes a documentary understands that a documentary is a work in progress. It is supposed to change and evolve over the shooting of it, over the making of it. But on the other hand, if you're doing a propaganda piece, well, the last thing you want is to evolve or have anything change. You've already got your script and you want to stick to it. This entire 4-hour hit piece is supposed to be a justification and celebration of Cosby's conviction. It's not about looking at the facts. It's not about asking, gee, why was it that the prosecutors didn't want to prosecute? And why was it that the appellate court overturned the conviction? That's not how much you want to bet. Just like the first trial is not going to take up any time in this mockumentary, there's not going to be any time devoted to why it is that the appellate court overturned the conviction. Kamau Bell's not going to talk about that, because if he does, it becomes, okay, so this was a railroading. This is all meant to be pushing the black rape culture lie. And speaking of liars, Kamau Bell is a liar. But more than that, he's a coward. It doesn't take any courage to go after Bill Cosby, because Bill Cosby has no power. And nobody with power is going to stick up for him. That's the reason why the white media's been attacking him nonstop. If it was courageous to do so, they wouldn't be doing it. Because it would take courage to go after a white media executive. or a white media mogul, or even a white politician, which is why Kamau Bell doesn't do that, because they do have power. And even if the person that he would call himself doing a story about can't retaliate directly, you better believe that all of the powerful white men he's allied with, they'll recognize the danger and they'll do whatever they can to stop him. But with a sniveling piece of trash like Kamau Bell, they don't need to use any threats. He's so desperate for them to give him a job. He's just so thirsty for a steady paycheck. He'll do their bidding, no threats required. Have you ever noticed that whenever the white media's tell you about some black person doing a documentary, that it's never because they're going after a white person with power? In fact, these sanctioned Negroes, they never ever make a white person the subject of their documentaries. They speak about racism in the most general of terms, but they never get specific with it. They never single anyone out.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the bootlick understands fully the rules of racism in America. That's the reason why they make it a point not to violate any of those rules. That's why it was a joke, though not in a funny way, for Kamau Bell to claim that I know that there are black people right now who may be fans of my work or fans of United Shades or maybe fans who will turn their back on me once this comes out. Well, I can go ahead and take the guesswork out of that one for you, Kamau. You don't have any fans. You might have a few geriatrics whose remote control's broken that can't change the channel, but that's about the closest to a fan base you got. There's nobody who likes you, so you don't have to worry about losing any fans. You can't lose what you never had. But then he says, it could be black people in show business. It could be people in show business. Well, first of all, these bootlicking Negroes over in Hollywood, he already knows ain't none of them going to speak against the white media narrative. They are as dependent and desperate and thirsty for work from these white media corporations as he is. So for him to, what about these black people in show business? I could be ostracized. This is what some white handler told him to say. Go ahead and play the martyr. Tell them that you're concerned that the black community will be so intolerant. They'll be just so offended by hearing the truth about Cosby, their hero. You're so brave for saying this. You're so brave for sticking up. Why, you'll be locked out. The black community will turn its backs on you. Just go ahead and say that. Get yourself some quickie sympathy. Let's at least float it as a trial balloon. That's the lie. I mean, the line we'll go with. And we'll see if anybody buys it. At least he'll give you cover. Because why? Look at all you're risking. Look at how all much you're risking going after the all-powerful Bill Cosby, the man with so much power and the man with so much influence, because that's what you would have to believe if you were silly enough to go along with the garbage that Kamau Bell is peddling. And while it's undeniable that Kamau Bell is a clown, what also needs to be understood is that jokes can become dangerous if people with power take them seriously. Like all his fellow bootlicks, Kamau Bell is a buffoon. He's an idiot. He's a coward. He's a moron. But that's not to say that these bootlicks are harmless. Quite the opposite. White supremacy uses the bootlicks to be the forward element for all of their anti-black racial attacks. I told you about that with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You had Elder Michaud. He was the sock puppet that the FBI was using to spew their lies about Dr. King. The times change, but the lies and the liars remain the same. These bootlicks give cover to their white supremacist masters with the feeble and blatantly false claim, I'm just trying to start a conversation. But the conversation never takes the form of pointing the finger at the dominant society. You never see them pointing the finger at white men in power and demanding to know why the law never touches them. There is a completely and thoroughly uneven distribution of power in the society. That is the reason why the only kind of relationship that we can have with the dominant society is oppressor and oppressed. We do not have the power to prevent them from harming us or to punish them when they do. So until that day, no, we are not friends. We cannot be. Friendship requires social, economic, and political equality. Otherwise, you simply have the tolerated and the otherwise tolerant. And the people without power, they'll be tolerated until those with power decide to change their minds. Our freedom, our liberty, our rights cannot be held hostage to the whims or good favor of the dominant society. That's what's going on here. So it is dangerous to allow these bootlicks to be running around. And yes, it does matter who it is who's in their circle. It is not at all impolite or out of bounds for us to be asking questions, because we've seen this pattern too many times before. What do Jonathan putting on his cape heart and Kamau Bell have in common? The same thing that Clarence Thomas and Robin Roberts have in common, that they all have a Caucasian spouse. Yet all of them will be the first ones running their mouths talking about their black credibility, and they'll be also the first ones trying to talk about things relating to the black community. But they've always got something negative to say about the black community. They aggressively run the black community into the ground, and they only represent their spouse's interests. Bell himself is married to a certified Karen. And no, that's not typecasting, that's pattern recognition. And even Bill, you could see in his conversation, he knew nobody's going to buy this line of crap that I'm saying. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's not about black people at all. It is about men of all races, the black community. We need to have this conversation. I haven't sold out. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. I'm sure that if you say it about 1,000 other times, we'll believe it, because the first 1,000 times you said it wasn't enough. Just keep saying it enough times and people will believe it, right? Black folks will fall for it because black folks are simple-minded, right? Right? And yet clowns, these bootlicks like Kamau Bell, they all want to claim that they're their own person and they stand on their own 2 feet. They don't have a problem with being black. They don't have a problem with black people. When you listen to the things they all say, or when you look at what they all do, you see that there's no difference between the black liberal or the black conservative, not where the question of protecting white supremacy is concerned. I think we can all agree where Clarence Thomas stands on the subject of reparations. And yet Jonathan Capehart, who's supposed to be a black LGBT liberal, he says that all black people really want is just an apology. We don't want reparations. We just really want an apology. Now, who nominated this clown to be the spokesperson for all of Black America? Both Clarence Thomas and Jonathan Capehart are in full agreement that black people shouldn't get reparations. You notice how all of these bootlicks, whether they're on the left or the right, they always fall into complete lockstep where the issue of black empowerment is concerned, where the issue of calling out white supremacy and punishing white supremacy is concerned. Nah, they don't ever get specific about that. Can't put a name on it, can't say anything specific, and we don't want to go too far. We just want to speak in very vague generalities. Yeah, all of these bootlicks who the white media puts on, they understand exactly what their job description is. You better not say anything that sticks up for black people, and you definitely better not say anything that threatens white supremacy. Now, how is this supposed to be an ideological difference? I thought that both the clowns like Capehart and Clarence, that they represented 2 different sides of the political spectrum. Instead, they've just turned out to be flip sides of the same coin. So no matter what the white media says, they're not going to whitewash or otherwise clean up this Kamau Bell farce. Cosby was and still is a media distraction, nothing more. This is just a continuation of the same tired smear campaigns of the white media pulled against Michael Jackson. The man had been dead a decade, but HBO was putting out a hit piece calling itself Leaving Neverland. With new allegations, they said. Not a lick of evidence, nothing to support it. And then you look at the guy who's making the accusations, and it's a clown who had previously testified that Michael Jackson never touched him. This is all a phony distraction campaign that the white media wants out there. Because as long as we're talking about Michael Jackson or Bill Cosby, we're not talking about the white media moguls and executives and corporate honchos who have been violating women left, right, and center. They use their media to manufacture phony outrage about black male celebrities so that nobody ever looks in their direction. These scumbags got all the mileage they could out of slandering and defaming Michael Jackson. So now we see this pathetic and transparent attempt to make Cosby the new go-to distraction. Kamau Bell must be tired of slumming over at CNN, or he's realizing that they're getting tired of throwing him crumbs. Either way, he's desperately auditioning for a job. The men who own and run the media, they know that if the focus is ever put on them, a lot of them will lose their jobs, their fortunes, and even their freedom. So they've hatched this plan and been pushing it for years to keep up a persistent distraction campaign. Talk about any high-profile black man that you can. We're going to have a TV special as often as we can. One so-called documentary after the next. Just a steady drumbeat of distraction. The white media wants to manufacture the lie that, oh, everybody just hates Cosby. Look at how many accusers he has. Don't look at the fact that they have no evidence. And don't look at the fact that many of them are drug addicts or freelance prostitutes and the rest of it. Don't look at that. Don't look at the fact that these accusations, even the DAs looked and said, no jury's going to believe this. Don't believe all that. Don't look at that. Instead, just look at how unkind they say Cosby was. Don't ask if it's true or not. The white media is mad because Bill Cosby survived being railroaded into prison. They thought that prison was going to kill him. That's what they thought. The prosecutors told him that he could get his sentence reduced, but first he had to give a false confession. Go ahead and confess to this crime. Say that you did it. If you say you did it, we'll let you out. If you say you did it. And the reason that they were so persistent about trying to force Cosby to give some sort of false confession was because they knew the clock was ticking. They knew that their only so-called piece of evidence against Cosby was an illegally obtained deposition from a civil suit. That wasn't even a confession. It was just a matter of, okay, so you say that he drugged her. Well, he gave her some sort of Ambien or something, but she was hardly drugged. They're like, it doesn't matter. Spin on it. We'll have this cherry-picked jury going along with it because we've already been prepping them for it. We've already prepped them with the lie that Cosby did something. We've already prepped them. Knew that no appellate court would allow that conviction to stand. So they put all the pressure they could on Cosby, did whatever they thought was going to break the man, but he didn't break. And they knew there was only a matter of time before the man was eventually released. So they needed him to say, yes, I did it. They needed him to say that so they could always have a justification. Even when Cosby predictably could get the sentence vacated or at least removed, get expunged, wouldn't matter. They thought they would be able to always point and say, well, he did confess. He knew he was guilty. So it doesn't matter what he tries to do about his criminal record. He knew he was guilty because we got him to confess. He said he did it. They needed him to confess. That was the entire point. But Cosby never did. So now the white media has been reduced to what they did with O.J. Simpson. Just put out hit pieces, calling the liars victims, and make sure not to examine their claims, make sure not to ask why the conviction was thrown out. Why was O.J. Simpson not found guilty in the criminal trial? Well, gee, why don't you look at the racist cops? Why don't you look at the broken chains of evidence, plural? They didn't have a case. That's the reason why. No, it was, as Jeffrey Jagoff Tubin put it, the race card. It was the race card. Having failed to kill Cosby in prison, having failed to break the man and force him to confess to a crime that he didn't commit, now what the white media is doing is they're trying to keep up a steady drumbeat of lies. Okay, if we couldn't win that way, we're going to see if we can just make people believe that he's guilty because we keep saying it all the time. The white media's favorite talking point is to claim this many women can't be lying. Now, that's something that they didn't say regarding Daniel Holtzclaw. That guy actually is a serial rapist. Unlike Cosby, Daniel Holtzclaw actually did sexually violate women, except the problem is they were all black. So because of that, we got questions, you can't believe all of women. We shouldn't believe any of it. Innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't matter how many accusations. What matters is he gets his day in court. And don't forget, he's innocent. So, can this many drug addicts and failed actresses and scorned would-be mistresses, could they all be lying? Yes, actually, they can. Almost none of the so-called Cosby accusers have accused him of rape, by the way. That's something that the white media conveniently leaves out of all of their hit pieces. How many of these phony accusers actually accuse Cosby of rape? Most of them only said that there was inappropriate touching, unwanted advances, etc. In other words, the kind of vague, nebulous stuff that could mean anything or nothing at all. Though that's not how the white media reported it. Why, they reported that Cosby had his rocket out of his pocket every chance he had. Why, he was just bending women over left, right, and center. I mean, there was nothing with a skirt that was safe around this man. They slandered the man repeatedly using a word that wasn't even included in any of the accusations or even the indictments, saying rape, when that's not what he was charged with. But they just kept repeating that over and over again to the point that that's what people think that he got convicted of. So by indiscriminately calling all of these women the Cosby accusers without ever actually telling the viewers or readers specifically what they accused him of, the white media got the effect that they were trying to manufacture. They wanted to fabricate this amalgamation of one giant rape complaint, that Bill Cosby was just this one-man rape wave. And while they were trying to make up out of whole cloth the lie that Andrea Constant was a rape victim, they never actually told the public what it was that Constant was alleging. She was claiming that there was some sort of hand play, foreplay, hanky-panky with the fingers, what she was saying. But the only real accusation that they actually thought could get Cosby on anything was, well, she claimed that she had been drugged. She hadn't been drugged. That was her fallback fabrication, the fallback phony accusation, because she couldn't claim that Cosby had had forcible sexual intercourse with her. None of them could. So instead it was, oh, those roaming fingers of his, and what can I was drugged so that he could molest me while I was helpless. That's what they were actually claiming. They were claiming basically that there was illegal or illicit use of a controlled substance or something. That's what they were basically trying to spin into a big rape accusation. The white media, as well as all of these accusers, are all lying by omission. The whole Cosby witch hunt didn't come about organically at all. This wasn't grassroots, it was pure astroturf, a white media smear campaign. And now the racist reprobates who did it are desperately trying to cover their behinds. They know that if people hear a lie enough times, that becomes the truth. This is the phase of the smear Cosby jihad that we're seeing right now. And who is it who put these women up to this? The same white media who the evidence strongly suggests put Hannibal Buress up to his one-man defamation campaign of Cosby. The same white media who put up the money for this latest media fraud and using Kamau Bell as their front Negro for it. But the public, particularly the black public, aren't as stupid as the white media and Kamau Bell need them to be in order to pull off this lie. We're not dumb, and we're not going to be silent either. We know exactly what this is about. We know that these are the white media moguls and media executives who are trying to find a way to crucify black men in the press, kick up a stink, kick up some sand, let's have some white noise about black men, and hopefully if we do it long enough, well, maybe all of this interest in sexual misconduct and sexual predation in the workplace will blow over and go away. We can get back to business as usual if we just ride out the storm. And the best part about it is we can get the heat off of ourselves by putting it on black men who didn't even do the things we're accusing them of. Yeah, let's go ahead and make sure that it's a big target. Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson. Doesn't matter if it's all lies. What matters is we got a name that we can attach it to. And hey, a large part of the population will like the idea that this Negro who made more money than them and their children, their children's children, and children's children will ever make in their lifetimes, that, well, we took him down. So they'll give a wink and a nod and, good things, a certain sense that things are being restored to rights. That's the game that they're playing. Those are the buttons that they're pushing. So no, Kamau Bell, we're not having a conversation about Bill Cosby. We're having a conversation about you. Because if there's one thing that the black grassroots understands, it's this. The white media can use all of its billions of dollars to manufacture as many hit pieces against black people as they want. And they can trot out all of their black frontmen and flunkies and losers like Kamau Bell and Hannibal Buress that they want. But the only thing that the white media can do is to give these clowns a platform. They don't have the power to give any of them legitimacy. You have to go to the grassroots to get that. And as Kamau Bell has already told us, he already knows we don't believe him. And like any good bootlick, he understands that his ability to continue getting a paycheck from NASA is directly linked to how effectively he can mislead the black masses. So it's not the white media who have the power to pull his card. We do. Good night, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Mandisa, Miss Debbie, John Harvin, Eric Johnson, and Duane Brown. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.